Okay, so we're going to talk about technology, but we're going to talk about more than just technology, because we're actually talking about digital organizing, because we're talking about community organizing today. And we're so excited to be here with this group. This is exactly who, in terms of wanting to give back to all those people I mentioned that had taken the time with me over the years. Now it's so exciting to be trying to contribute to this amazing network here for collaboration. So a lot of times when people think of technology, organizing tools, they really focus on the apps, the digital apps, and that's certainly essential when you're talking about technology, when you're talking about digital organizing. But you have, one thing that became clear through the Wynne campaign was that there are apps and then there are approaches. And that, may be obvious in terms of you have to use the apps and you have to use them well. And that's stating the obvious. At the same time, in a lot of cases, people put a lot of focus on the app and think that the app is going to do something for them. They forget that not forget, but it's harder. It's so much harder. It's easy to find the app. It's hard to figure out what to do with the app, right? So in talking about digital organizing, we are going to be talking about that whole picture, talking about not only apps, but approaches. And what you have here are a number, just is not comprehensive, but the idea is just to give you a sense of the complexity of organizing online, just like organizing on the ground. And I don't need to go into that complexity with this group, but I do think it's worth noting in this digital age some of the skill sets that are required to put on a good digital campaign. Things like data analytics, coding, web, database administration, more and more, especially on the data analytics side, we have to be thinking about ways to access these kinds of skill sets more affordably and to make sure that grassroots organizers have access to these tools. So we are going to talk about apps and approaches, but we'll certainly start with the app side of things. And one thing we did, and it's essential in all the community organizations that I've been involved with and am involved with, and including the Wynne campaign, we're always committed to using the best-in-class digital cloud-based applications. So what are the best tools out there that are the most affordable, scalable? So these are some of the products that we know and love. I'm sure you use many of these tools. The idea, I guess, why we put this up here, though, is there are some characteristics of these companies that are just two things here. One is that these products are they offer scalable product. So they're enterprise grade in that the largest companies can use these platforms and these products, and they have affordable monthly prices so that grassroots organizations can also use these products. And because they work at scale, because they're so large, what they can do is they can offer very good individualized customer support. And more these companies are getting more sophisticated so that when you send a question, say to help@nationbuilder.com, my point person is AJ, and AJ will respond back to me, and I develop a relationship with AJ so that it makes it a more meaningful relationship and a more efficient interaction. Right? So that's some of the reasons why we use these apps, because they make our work more efficient, and that's because a very large pool of people is putting ideas into these products. So in particular, though, we want to talk about one app. Although I preface this with saying that on the Wynne campaign and any campaign I'm involved with, we're app agnostic. Like, we do not, whatever is going to get the job done, and there's no app that is the sort of magic bullet. You are gonna, the app that's good for you is the app that gets the job done and achieves your goals, right? So if you can get it done with something that's a third the cost of NationBuilder, that's excellent, right? So we always set the goal, let the goal drive the technology. That's, again, obvious, but I think worth stating before we get into NationBuilder and start talking about this product, because it was great for us, but it's not right for everybody, and it's not right for every cause. So NationBuilder, why it's exciting, why I'm excited about it, and when we found it on before we set up the Wynne website, is that it's really kind of a next generation database. I've used a lot of different databases, CiviCRM. I've used, there's, MailChimp, you can think of it as a database. You can think of Artez's database. There are lots of great databases out there, but this, in terms of next generation, it really it goes end to end. So what NationBuilder will do is it will go everywhere from posting or allowing you to build your website on the NationBuilder platform. It then has a sign-in feature that allows you to identify who's interacting with you. However, it doesn't try to recreate a social media, the social media tools like Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, all those great things that are out there. What it does is it draws that information from those networks that's publicly available, depending on who's already in your network, so that you can start with a base of supporters from your social media sites without having to, basically recreate those social network communities. And then it goes all the way from that contact management to communication. So it will do email blasts, text blasts. Anybody who just texted action to that number at the beginning, you're interacting with NationBuilder there. So it'll ask you for your information, and then you can do follow-up with those contacts, obviously. And the last thing in terms of what they do, I'll get into so it goes end to end. So on the Kathleen Wynne campaign, NationBuilder was our campaign digital home base. So it was not the only part of our tool we used for to execute the digital strategy, but it was the home base. And it's where we were always pointing our calls to action. So anytime we'd send out an email, anytime we'd have volunteers sign up, anytime we would ask people for money, they were coming to interact with our platform, which was NationBuilder. As we talked about, NationBuilder does contact management. It has very good functionality in terms of integrating with the most popular social networking tools. It has the ability to set up broadcasters. So luckily, we live in Canada, and in terms of its functionality right now, it has good texting capability in Canada and the United States. So for free, you get a phone number. It's like you don't have to pay for that. You get a phone number, 647 number. That one I put up there is a NationBuilder assigned number for our database, and then you pay, per amount of text that you want to use. So, say 4,000. I'm not exactly sure the cost, but it would be, like a couple $100 for 4,800 texts per month. I just pulled 4,800 out of the air because that's what we used on the Wynne campaign for the convention. But I guess this is the last piece I just wanted to highlight about NationBuilder, because the point today is not to give a NationBuilder training session. It's just to give a window in to open the hood, I guess, on the Wynne campaign, and to say this is what we were using. But one of the main things we talked about already is the excellent customer service that they have, and I can't stress that enough in terms of why it's a good platform. Over to Adel.
And so Chris talked about the applications. I'm going to talk about the approach, which, like Chris mentions from the start, if you don't have the right approaches, applications are pretty much worthless to you. And the winning combination that we used with the Wynne campaign that can be translated to any sort of campaign, whether it be issue-related or politically related, is the combination of data, communication, and coordination. So let me start by illustrating as my time as volunteer coordinator for Kathleen Wynne's campaign. I'll start by defining what data is and what it was for me personally. Data for you, its definition changes for whatever purposes you might have. For me, it was a combination of open and click rates on emails, the number of shift signups, the number of shifts completed, number of calls we made, and both physical and mental notes that I kept of my conversations with volunteers. That some of them are here, which is pretty awesome. Let me touch upon this curve, which this is my Mona Lisa. I love the normal distribution curve. I know it's kind of weird, but that's how much I love data. So just to give you guys an example of it, assuming I asked all you guys a question or gave you 5 questions with a scale of 1 to 5 and you answered it, most of you, 68% of you, are going to be the average. The others, some of you are going to be straying a bit to the left or right. You're going to be still close to the average, but you're going to be in that the 95.4%. But then there's always the extremes, like the extreme viewpoints are at the ends. And the importance of this is that, especially with the Wynne campaign, is, for example, civic engagement is different with people. So everyone here probably is on the blue and the red part of the curve. So we all engage in similar ways, some of us more than others. But when it comes to the media, their civic engagement is extreme. So you have to be able to understand who the population is and how you're going to tailor your message and tailor any engagement you want from those specific individuals, depending on what you want to achieve from it. But going now to communication, and my first example, I'm going to demonstrate how data, communication, and coordination works together through examples. I find that's the best way to explain things. So, like I explained before, I use data from my mental and physical notes with volunteers, with Kathleen Wynne's campaign. What I realized was that some of them felt appreciated, but sometimes they didn't feel as appreciated as they should be. And this really hit home when I had a couple volunteers come up to me after they were signing out, and they told me, where can I sign out? And I said, no, it's fine, you just sign in. And they said to me, does it not matter how many hours I put in? And that's why it does, we know how much time you put in, but we have no physical manifestation of showing you it. So talk to Chris, talk to our other graphic design guys, and taking the conversations, both the mental and physical notes that I had, we came up with the volunteer profiles, which is why I'm with Kathleen, or I'm with Kathleen. We used alternates to it. And basically what this is we allowed all our volunteers to write 2 to 3 sentences about why they were supporting Kathleen, took a picture of them, either it was a goofy one or a good one, and then we put it on our website. So when they came back the next day, I showed them, hey, maybe you're not signing out, but everyone online gets to see that you're one of our main volunteers. And that translated to a whole new batch of core volunteers. So this is sort of a small example, really does not involve any math or anything, but just to show you that data, in this case through communication, can really translate to actual manifestations with the new core volunteers. Now talk about coordination. Data and frustration, that was me at the start. That's not a picture of me, but I did that a lot of times. The first 2 weeks when I started, we had maybe 5 volunteers max a day. They're not consistent, a great turnover rate, which is terrible. And the campaign leadership decided that we need 10 volunteers a day. That compelled with my frustration and with looking at Chris's data from MailChimp, which showed me that the open and click rates is extreme with the amount of people that we had. And for some odd reason, I thought people would not check their emails from campaigns, and I was wrong. And that's one thing I learned very quickly, is that take your bias aside when it comes to analyzing data, because most of the time your bias are wrong and the numbers are right. And so this led me to creating an event, to create a phone bank event in NationBuilder. So NationBuilder was there, we were using it, but I wasn't using it at the time. But I needed to find a way to interact with the volunteers. And so I had to create an event and found out that NationBuilder used it. I played around with it. The key point is that I had no idea how to use NationBuilder. Because with the Obama campaign, we used Vote Builder as a whole different thing. NationBuilder stemmed from Obama alumni in 08, so we didn't even touch it. So I just played around with it with no fear of screwing up, and it led to a lot of success. So what I did was I created an event with 2 or 3 hour shifts, and then I created an email blast, like Chris mentioned, which you could do with NationBuilder. And I crafted an email, different types of emails, and I sent it out to a list, which we title as the volunteer phone bank volunteers for Kathleen Wynne's in the GTA. Sent it out. We had a pretty good response rate. We were achieving the 9, 10, 11 people a day, but I was still frustrated. I saw that the amount of people that were looking at the emails and how that translated into numbers just did not make any sense. So what that led me to do is go back to NationBuilder And my favorite part of NationBuilder is that it provides you a platform to analyze all the data that you have. So I was able to go onto it and see how many people clicked it, how many people opened it, how many people actually signed up. And analyzing that, I discovered two really important things, and that leads to the second graphic, how data leads to more data, which leads to even more data and more efficiency, is the one way of saying it. But basically, I noticed that people who volunteered for 2-hour shifts volunteered more than people for 3-hour shifts. So people tend to volunteer more, like two shifts or 2-hour shifts instead of one person volunteered just for 1 3-hour shifts. And I was like, I was trying to figure out why, but I realized it's probably because when people see 3 hours, they think that's more than 2 hours, but if they just volunteer for 2 hours, it's like, oh, I can do another 2 hours. It's not that big of a deal. And another thing I noticed was with the subject title line. It's that I realized that looking at all the emails I sent, and which had the greatest success rate, was the ones that had a tinge of urgency, a short body email, short body text, and it added a hint of a personal touch. And those ones were opened the most, and so I stuck to those two things. And it worked like a charm. And I'm going to explain how this translated into the leadership election meeting. So I'm going to talk about some of the numbers now. And again, this is all thanks to, like, these numbers would be non-existent without volunteers themselves, so they deserve the most credit. But so on Saturday, January the 12th, that was the first day of the LEM. Up to then, we were building up. We had more than 10 volunteers a day. We were leading up to, sometimes 15. Both the Saturday and the Sunday, people voted in each riding for 16 delegates to represent whoever they wanted them to represent, to go and vote at the convention. But basically, on that day, which was, everything was leading up to that day, it was the most important day up to that point. We had 31 total phone bank volunteers for the day. That's unheard of. This was a direct result of looking at NationBuilder and how we went from the start of having less than 5 volunteers a day, trying different things out through NationBuilder and seeing what works and what doesn't, and adapting to it as quickly as we could. And so out of those 31 total volunteers, 26 were scheduled through NationBuilder, 5 were non-scheduled. And when I asked them why they showed up, they said it was because they saw that there was a hint of urgency in the email, and I didn't spend too long explaining what we needed, and that's why they showed up. And so that meant that we had 15 volunteers on the phones at all times, from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m., nonstop, on that Saturday. That I had to kick some staffers out of their desk. I had to move some people around because we didn't have enough phones for everyone. It only ended up being like maybe 2 phones for all staffers that were in the office at the time. I was frustrated, but I was also frustrated in a good way. This was a good frustration for once. Yeah, that's true. And that same night, campaign leadership took notice, and they brought 5 new phones. And so it translated pretty quickly, and the next day we had enough phones for the volunteers that were coming to make these calls. And just to emphasize how great the volunteers were, we made the most calls than any other campaign, and we had the most live conversations. And on top of that, I am pretty sure we made more calls and had more live conversations than some of the campaigns combined. So it's pretty strong. The volunteers did their fair share, and they did an awesome job, but they only came because looking through the data and the analysis and making sure it's personal, making sure that everything comes together led to the great 31 volunteers that we had in one day.
So as we talk about, just before I move on to this slide, as we talk about buying new phones, that's like, oh, dollars, I got to have this infrastructure. Just want to give a sense of the fact that we also did similar organizing around fundraising through NationBuilder, and the Wynne campaign was the only campaign where over 50% of the donors for the campaign were from individuals, not companies. So we were very proud of that fact, that we're the only campaign that had over 50% from individuals. So in terms of paying for those phones, like this is how these tactics also help with that. So what Adel talked about is on the volunteer management side, and of course is we're talking about a lot of politics here, right? But I hope that political organizing, but there was a lot of talk about network-based organizations, membership-based organizations. Of course, Adel and I have both worked for and currently work for a number of different community organizations. And our most recent experience was political, but these same things apply to network-based organizations, of course, right? And I forgot what I was going to say. So let's move on to this slide. And this slide basically, I know what I was going to say. Adel talked about volunteer management, which is essentially about getting voter identification, right? So those phone banks that he set up were all about having calls, identifying our voters, getting delegates to the convention. So it's all about communicating with people. And the other, not the other side, but the other piece where I was really focused was building the team that did the digital communication. So basically the message and the policy was developed by other groups. But what I had the challenge, and it was put to me early on in the campaign, was, okay, you need to come up with essentially how we're going to amplify that message. And these tools are the amplification of the things that were done by the policy, the comms, media teams on the campaign. And I think I understood very early on when I started that maybe it was because it was coming into winter or something, but I thought of myself a bit as a snowplow. And to explain why, that's not a very nice image maybe, or thing to be. But what I mean by that is that I essentially had to clear the way in order for a bunch of creative people to do their thing on the campaign. I couldn't do all the things, but what I had to do is bring a team together that most of whom were under 25 years old, and were going to put their ideas together and be very productive. So basically, what I had to do was interface with the campaign leadership to get buy-in. I had to go all the stakeholders in the organization that came together, which is the Wynne campaign, and I had to get buy-in from everybody, basically to say, listen, we're going to do things differently. Those were difficult conversations in a lot of cases, so that's hence the snowplow analogy. But we did get buy-in, and it was a very cool kind of thing, because here's the point. It was all about the way we worked, right? The open, iterative approach. And what I'm going to say here, and these graphics are I'm going to try to illustrate what the way we worked, how that affected the end result, the product. So we had no idea, I'll be quite honest, we had no strategy, right, for the Wynne campaign. I mean, in terms of digital, I had not done this before. Most of the other people working had not done a leadership campaign before. I would say actually all of the core people on the digital team had not done this before. So that was a huge asset because we had no idea that we were what we were not going to be able to do. And that translated us to be able to do much more than we could have imagined we were going to do. So one of the things, an example, Adel was talking about the leadership election meetings. So at those LEMs, we needed to have members voting at those LEMs. In order to have the members there, they had to sign up by November 23rd, I think it was. And so there was a huge membership push. So we had 10 days left. It was a very short period. I mean, all of you heard about the SNAP decision by McGuinty to step down. So it all happened in a very condensed time frame, what would usually for the Liberal Party have happened in over a much longer time frame. And so we needed to think of ways, like how are we going to create that sense of urgency, get people to sign up, realize that if you do not sign up, you're not going to be able to vote at the LEM. And so, as we were talking about it, we've got this tool, we set up NationBuilder, we hadn't thought, oh yeah, we're going to do a membership campaign. We were like, well, why don't we do a membership campaign, and what are we going to do with that? We did a 10 and 10 campaign. So literally that was just, how we came up with that was, again, we had that objective of signing people up by November 23rd. We were 10 days away, and we wanted to do a campaign online, and I sat down with the graphics, comms, digital comms guys, and we started brainstorming. We said, okay, 10 and 10, that sounds good. We have a Grey Cup coming up. We have some Grey Cup tickets. Why don't we say, we'll enter you into a draw. If you are one of these 10 and 10, and you sign up, you'll get entered if you recruit 10 people in that draw to go with Kathleen to the Grey Cup. So that was the campaign, and the reason we were able to do that campaign is that NationBuilder, nicely enough, has a recruiting feature built in. So if you sign into NationBuilder, anybody in the world signs in, it has a unique URL that we basically showed people how to take that URL, put it in an email, send it to their friends, or it has functionality built in to forward that URL through your social media networks, Facebook, Twitter, right? And if somebody then clicks on that link and goes and signs up on the forum, the system knows, because of the unique your ID on the end of that URL that it's assigned to that recruiter, it knows that that recruiter recruited the person who came to our website. So we can attribute back that person recruited somebody. So that's how we were able to do this 10 and 10, instead of having to have people kind of email us the 10 names, or, which just is like a complete headache when you're dealing with a provincial campaign. So that was a lot of fun. 70 people participated, and that was cool. We signed up a third of the online members for the entire campaign. So like there were 4,800 or 43, I forget exactly the number, but it was just over 4,000 people signed up online for the campaign. The Wynne campaign signed up 1,200 of them. So it was that was kind of cool. We were like, and the leadership understood that. They're like, oh, they kind of, again, paying attention. And a number of the different projects that then followed were because we were having fun, and we were trying to do better every time we did a campaign. And again, a campaign within a campaign, now we're talking here. So we thought of this as a campaign within the campaign. And then our next, we had a number of different deadlines. We did that, I'm with Kathleen, volunteer drive. But as we were approaching the convention, we really started thinking about that in December. And I had talked to a friend, and he had gone to a federal liberal convention. He had done something really cool. He had created a Google Calendar, and he made it available to everybody. It had all the hospitality suites. So I actually really care where these hospitality suites are. So it was really great that he independently, and he promoted it through Twitter, he had this calendar. And so we were thinking, and it's just certainly not just my idea, but we were talking with a bunch of people on the digital team, and we said, well, what if we made the Wynne website like a really genuinely useful tool for everybody coming to the convention? Like, regardless of whether we win or lose, like, why not just try to actually make it a useful tool? And so that led to thinking, okay, well, how are we going to do that? Well, our current website, you're not going to have a laptop in Maple Leaf Gardens there as you're standing around cheering trying to get a scarf from the other candidates. You're going to be walking around, you got your cell phone. So we said, okay, well, our current website is really good for a laptop. It's good to engage with, but it's not great for this convention setting. So how can we make it better? And that's when one of our great team members said, well, Tumblr is just streaming content, right? Like, it's set up really well for having people submit photos, submit videos, submit ideas, and then the moderator on the back end can approve those. And then we were like, wow, that's a really neat idea, because that means that everybody in the convention can submit great photos and their experiences, and we can create basically like a stream of content that people can then watch on their mobile phones, or if they're at home and not able to be at the convention. So that led to the idea of basically getting rid of our website, but not a NationBuilder, of course, because you don't have to get rid of NationBuilder if you can still use the system even if you're not using the website itself. So we basically redirected the URL to Tumblr, and we repurposed Tumblr to be the Wynne Now website. And Wynne Now was our brand for the convention. And we switched colors. It went from these colors to the black and white, so people kind of felt like and saw the difference. And this is Tumblr. So this is like a skin on top of Tumblr, and in info, for example, if you clicked info, you see schedule, and that's where we had the calendar of all the candidates' events. And so we tried to make it a useful resource. And again, so I guess this is the point that I'm getting to here is, it was one thing just to have that, and that may have been enough, but if nobody went to the site, it's kind of useless, right? So we're saying, okay, well, how are we actually going to let people know this? And so we said, well, we got to generate some buzz. We got to make this a little cool. So we thought, okay, well, we're going to launch this on the Thursday, or I forget exactly, it's probably on a Thursday because that was the day before the convention started. So why don't, on the Wednesday, we put a graphic on Facebook that doesn't tell people what we're going to do, but tries to create a little buzz. And so we said the news begins tomorrow, right? And now, of course, everybody out there is, they're all expecting another candidate to drop out, right? Like, I mean, before we put that up, right? So already people are talking about, okay, who's going to drop out? So when we put that up, it wasn't intended actually to create the kind of reaction it did, but it was quite effective in getting people to give us basically to sign up on. But we set up a special landing page. People could sign up to get the news first. We have had a text keyword that people text in. We had hundreds of people texting that number, basically because what we then did when we launched it is we sent an email and a text blast out that we had launched the site. And the reporters also got, Robert Benzie was like, like they're all interested, what's the news, right? And, asking if another candidate's going to drop out, and well, not that exciting, but for us it was exciting. So that was we're generating some buzz online in order to then broadcast the fact we launched it, because we wanted actually people to be coming to this site, and not just our people, but we wanted all the candidates in their teams to be checking the Wynne Now website. So we wanted to just that's a lot of us talking. We do have one more slide after this, but we want to take a couple questions, then we'll talk about the last slide, and then we'll do a couple more questions for however much time, and we want to make sure we don't keep you too late, so we'll move right along.
Let me know if you've got a question. I'll bring you the mic.
Hello. Can you use NationBuilder if your website's developed through a different provider?
If your website's developed to a different provider, so like a WordPress website, right?
Yeah, for example, my organization just went through a very, time-intensive and expensive website development process that we're still in, but a lot of these tools would be useful to add on to that. So I'm just wondering if we could incorporate it somehow, or...
Yeah. So there are, again, we're going to get into that there are many different types of apps, and some are going to be better for than others. I don't know your specific context, right? NationBuilder you can't separate out the pieces and just kind of attach them to your website. So if you want to do something like that, you might look at Blue State Digital Tools. They would have the different components that are kind of all put together in NationBuilder. They would take those components, they call it their tool set, and you can attach those maybe to your website, right? And you could talk to your website developers about doing that. However, I would say that you can also use NationBuilder and just, you can assign a subdomain, so you could, whatever your organization, throw something in front of it and host NationBuilder there. You could develop a sort of a microsite where that's an engagement hub, if you want to think of it like that, and you can do a lot there. So if you have an informational website, you don't have to get rid of that. Do something and make sure that the branding is consistent. People don't know that they're leaving your environment. They don't think of it as a change, but you can do that engagement on a microsite type setup.
So the idea really is that you could take NationBuilder, take the pieces that you like there, and use them, and to the user experience, they don't have to know where they are. They just know they're on your site, and part of that site is hosted in one place, and part of it's hosted on NationBuilder and things like that. Is that kind of what you're? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, again, this is a really important point, I think, and something that a lot of organizations I've worked with do not get, is that no database is perfect, so you're paying for degrees of imperfection, and you can pay the relationship between value and cost is like not correlated at all. So, I think of Gmail. I use Gmail for everything. It's like being immensely valuable. I've paid $0 to Google. I've given them a lot of my personal information, and I give them a lot of, data to analyze. And I'm quite happy with that if I get the amount of value that I've gotten from Google. So, you obviously, as an organization, need to make decisions about who you're willing to share your information with. But if you do choose to share your information with people that are going to provide you a low-cost tool, you can get a lot of value out of that tool. And the point there was that for your organization, if you choose to use NationBuilder as a microsite, it's not going to integrate perfectly. No way. Like you may have like a donation button already on your website, and you may have to get rid of that portion of your website if you want to make use of the NationBuilder functionality, and then just redirect that link to your donation page on NationBuilder. And so there are compromises you have to make, but I think you don't have to get rid of your current website to use NationBuilder.
Both of you are very young and belong to that generation who, are very tech
I'm not that young.
savvy. But most decision makers in organizations are a lot older than you and maybe not that comfortable with using technology. So did you have a hard time convincing those, traditional leaders in using, your ideas? And also, did you have a problem where technology outpaced traditional methods? Like, what the Justin Trudeau campaign is, and I think they had a problem with the traditional way of registering people, but they already had a lot of people signing online.
Yeah.
Just touching on the first point when it comes to almost the changing of the old guard to the new guard when it came to the campaign and how they were doing it from the start. So Chris can testify to this probably better than me. There was a lot of pushback from the start because the people had no idea what this was and what we were doing. But I don't want to say it's fairly easy to understand once you explain it. It's fairly easy for people to understand, get a grip of it, and you just have to play around with it, like I did with NationBuilder, and then all of a sudden it becomes like your best friend. It might seem really complicated at first. You have no idea what these things mean, but once you throw yourself into it, there's no one's there to hold you back unless other than yourself.
So I just want to add to that because it's Adel's Mona Lisa, but it doesn't have to be everybody's Mona Lisa, right? Sorry, I'm just gonna poke fun at that.
That's fine.
Because that's the beauty of it. I totally understand what you're saying, and absolutely, not everybody in an organization needs to embrace these tools and love analyzing click rates and crafting a brilliant call to action and an urgent subject line. I mean, these are things that get us excited, but it doesn't have to get everybody excited, right? So I think I'm going to park the federal liberal sign-up issue, because that's a huge discussion, and I don't actually think it's worth. We could get really sidetracked if we because that's not necessarily the technology they're using is Van. And then on top of that, they've got obviously some team that has decided how to use VAN, Voter Activation Network. Obama, just to give you a sense, their team used VAN and then Blue State Digital in terms of the consulting and the digital tool set on top of VAN. So they have a great tool set available to them, the Federal Liberal Party. It's very expensive, and not necessarily even the Voter Activation Network, but the consulting services that go along with it. That's not available to everybody, but it's certainly a great system. In terms of how they're using their system, in terms of the approach and their decision to open membership, I don't think that's relevant to this. Well, it's relevant, but I don't think we want to get into that right now. So your question, though, which was really interesting, was how difficult it was to interface with people who haven't used these approaches before. And we are young. I'm 33. I mean, I'm not that young. It was incredibly difficult for me to interface with our campaign managers. I was lucky because they couldn't fire me, but if they could have, they probably would have. And I should say that it is to the extreme credit of our campaign manager, Tom Allison, and to Brian Clow, who head up our comms, that they let us do the things that we did. At the end of the day, they're extremely experienced political organizers, and they allowed us to do what we wanted to do, right? So, and we compromised based on what their strategy was and what their objectives were and what they said the limitations were. So it was back and forth. We didn't do everything just without checking in with them. It's necessary to work within the organizational framework and make sure that everything's vetted properly. Setting up those processes are tricky, and that was essentially my job, was to work very rapidly to interface with the senior people who didn't wanted the message to stay consistent, but also allow things to happen very quickly behind the scenes on the digital team. Okay, so yeah.
First of all, congratulations on running such a great campaign for Kathy and Wynne. I think you sold all of us in terms of NationBuilder, but I'm curious, just reflecting back, what were the failures of your campaign? And if you were to redo it over again, what was one thing you would have done differently?
I got lots of things on failures. Yeah, so we, a bunch of pieces really were very, like I destroyed our database at one point by making 80,000 duplicates or something.
Almost destroy the database too.
That was, yeah, so we had to restore the entire database. And, so what I'm saying is, in terms of where we failed, we didn't have enough time to prepare to understand exactly how to use the tool, so we ran into some problems that we then had to fix. I didn't know the functionality of NationBuilder fully, so I did some things at certain points that had caused some problems. But again, just because we needed to get the thing done, that's when I brought in MailChimp, and I needed to communicate with people very quickly, and a large 45,000 people we had to communicate with. So I used MailChimp because I knew that system better than I knew NationBuilder. So again, talking about practicality, we came into an issue where, I had created all these duplicates. We had to spend time to fix that problem. So I said, okay, listen, we need to get this message out. Let's set up MailChimp. I know the system. That worked fabulously. And then what we did is we got NationBuilder back in order, and we used it for a smaller environment of 20,000 people. And now I'm working to understand better how the import functionality on the system works. And anybody's used database, obviously that's the most difficult part is matching up on an import properly and dealing with the duplicate records. I have no magic answer for how to do that.
One problem actually I had was at the very beginning, after talking to Chris, talking to the other digital guys, we had this clear thing we wanted to do. We had a beer over it. We were like, this is what we want to do with the campaign. And then once I started, I obviously had a lot of pushback, but I sort of secluded myself in a way, because that's what you tend to do when, in campaigns at least, is people usually have their own sides, like the comms is at this side, volunteer recruitment is on this side, the campaign manager and the other leadership is on another side of the office. And so at one point I sort of secluded myself, but I realized it was a terrible thing to do. And so, and it was just a dumb thing to do for myself. And then once I got to know them better and just to talk to them, people at the first round table, they were talking about personal relationships. These extend also to the people you work with, not just the people you're trying to bring in. So by building these personal relationships with Tom Allison, who now, I love Tom Allison, I'd do anything for him. So people like that, once you really make them see the value in you and what you're bringing and actually achieve the trust, I think that's one thing I failed to do at the start. And once it was achieved, we were able to do this, so.
I like that, because we're seeing technology example and a people example, right? This is what we're talking about here. So there's one more slide, then we'll ask maybe one or two more questions, and because I know we probably have 7 minutes left or something now. We'll leave you with this, what I would call, it's a model. You could even think of this as an organizing app, right? If you want to think of it like that, because it was critical to every campaign and sub-campaign on the Wynne campaign, and I'll just quickly go through it here, and then we'll get to the important questions. So I got a call for the Wynne campaign, and it was somewhat frantic, saying we need a website. And I called some people that same day, and they told me about NationBuilder, and then I called some other. They wanted the website in 36 hours. So it's a very tight timeline, because we needed to launch on November 5th, and it was the week before, and we had to go through approval processes and whatnot. So I called up some people, and I said I had never heard of NationBuilder before. So I started using it. I was like, this is amazing. I don't know how to do anything on this system. So actually, a friend of mine follows some people on Twitter that were talking about NationBuilder a lot. And so my friend said, why don't you know this person? And I knew his boss, so I said, how do I get this guy? And he said, well, make an introduction. And then we got that guy. And then he was amazing and a good friend of mine now. And then that individual brought in his friend, who was a graphics guy on the campaign. So again, that came together within, that was the one evening, the first evening we got the call. Then we worked, unfortunately, the graphics guy, not unfortunately, he was working down in the Obama campaign, and he was working, it was pretty much full-time at that time on the Obama campaign, so he was doing this at like all night on the Wynne campaign, and then he was working on the Obama campaign during the day, so we were doing kind of 24-hour thing in order to get the website platform set up. And that was painful. But we got the site, and we got to know each other really well. That was the benefit. And we got the launch. So we realized how much NationBuilder could do and how much we liked working together. So that was like a very good experience. And so we developed the platform. And so all we had then was just the platform. We didn't know what we were going to do with it, but we kind of built it, right? And then what happened, well, by gathering the skill sets, so, the next introduction made by the graphics guy who was down the Obama campaign, he had worked with Adel down on the Obama campaign. He said, well, have you talked to Adel? And we went through a process of recruiting Adel, because I knew he had the skill sets. We needed to connect the volunteer management with what we were doing on the digital team, right? So in terms of gathering those skill sets, we showed on the first slide, making sure that we had all those skill sets on the team, and then just put those minds together and start thinking creatively and have fun, right? And that's crafting the campaigns, and always trying to do better and quicker and more. And then after crafting campaigns, obviously the only thing we were really doing on the campaign was trying to build better relationships with our supporters. More basically, if you want to think about it, what I thought about it was door knocking online, right? It's all we were doing. Political organizers have done it for years. Just have conversations, get to know people, right? Get to know what they care about, get to know who they are, and develop meaningful relationships. And then once you've communicated with people, you're now able to, and this is where it's a big difference in organizing the past, you're actually able to quantify those relationships in different ways and gain insights about how to build better relationships with people. And what that does, once you get down to this last step, then you iterate, then you improve the process. So the cool thing, when I'm thinking about this model, is that you start down here, you get here, and you can go back to any of the steps. So you can go back and improve your platform. You can go back and figure out what skill sets you're missing, figure out how to make better campaigns, or figure out what actually gain insights into what people care about, so you can get to know them better and become better, closer friends. So, and these may happen in different cycles. You may, if you develop a website, not do that platform development and choose a different platform on a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year cycle, but you may, every time you send out an email, try to be worried about how to make better relationships. So that, I think, those were the key when I'm thinking about, how do you distill down what was common in all of our different campaigns we ran on the Wynne campaign in terms of using technology. This model was very useful.
And speaking of this model, the Obama campaign actually, before they developed the BarackObama.com, used a very similar model to this. Jim Messina, the campaign manager, went to Silicon Valley, and through people he's heard of, he got introduced to Harper Reed. Harper Reed was, he was known in Silicon Valley. He knew how to develop different aspects and knew how to analyze data perfectly. So Jim Messina went to him and asked him, listen, I need you to develop something because there's not the same hope and change that there was in 08. We need to use data this time around to engage the electorate, because the president now doesn't have the same help as he did as being the first African American president in 08. So what Harper Reed did was he developed the platform, which was BarackObama.com and anything that was related to it. He gathered the skill sets by going back to Silicon Valley and all the people he knew. Now, I'm not saying we all have contacts like that, but just to give you an example with the Obama campaign, he went and brought 50 individuals to work strictly for analytics. And in Chicago, they had the thing called the Cave, where these 50 people spent literally almost 14 to 16 hours a day crunching numbers. sitting on a desk and just crunching numbers. That's all they were doing. And that led to them crafting different new campaigns. For example, one thing which I loved and we were so happy about when it came out was a video of the 47%. When that came out, first thing they did was they looked at their data and saw who would like this the most, and they crafted the message to suit the majority of those people who would actually make a difference from the independent section of the electorate. And then that led to, okay, I'm almost done. I love this story. And then this went to them building, obviously, meaningful relationship with us, the organizers at the bottom, not the bottom, I mean like on the ground, seeing how we can use what they're analyzing to impact the people we're having conversations with. I had over 10 to 15,000 conversations with people in North Carolina. I think that's more than I'm going to have in the next 2 years. That's, it's a ridiculous amount of people to talk to. But the best part is that how all of this led to them analyzing data and adapting constantly, always going down to looking at what the data is, how to go back and craft a new campaign, and then go back to within a campaign. When I'm saying campaigns, I mean a campaign within a campaign. And this led to analyzing more and setting up more campaigns to the point where you guys probably saw me looking at this, but in Hamilton County in Ohio for early vote, they predicted the 50 guys in the cave. They predicted a turnout of 57.68%. The turnout actually was 57.16%. And they predicted, this was in one county in a state. So they did this for each county, for each city within a county, all across, for the 10 swing states. But just to show you how valuable data is and why it's my Mona Lisa. But
so that's, can we do 2 questions? So that's the kind of extreme, right? Like that's like if you can get to that, great. None of us, well, I can't speak for everybody in the room. I certainly, working on the grassroots, am not aiming for that level of detail. I want to get the job done. Their job, they got done. We got the job done in the Wynne campaign. I hope you guys, everybody in here, hopefully we've brought something that will help you get your jobs done in your communities, right? And we're more than happy to interact with you. We're going to be sending out a text message now, which has a link to this slideshow to anybody who signed up at the beginning. If you haven't signed up already, it's text action at 647. I don't know.
While they're looking,
you're doing it,
we'll have 2 quick questions. You guys got to get back to the plenary in 2 minutes. So literally a tweet of a question. There we go.
So yeah, we'll send out a text with a link and you can check out the slideshow.
see, phones are better at remembering things than the human mind.
Yes, especially my mind. Is there...
I have a question here. Sorry. Just back to our organization, which are not mostly a non-profit organization. I think the first step for the organization would be to decide on a strategy and what's the goal. Like we want to use this tool because you have to remember it's tools. It's not the main purpose. Like for the organization, we have different, purpose and goals. And it's what I find with organization using social media and other things. They target so much and they focus so much on this social tool that they forget the essence itself of the organization and what you want to do and where you want to go.
Can I take a quick crack at that?
Yeah.
Because that's a very important point you bring up, and it's something that it's a little complex, and it would be unfair for me to say that we actually had a strategy on the Wynne campaign before starting. So I can't say that you need to have a strategy before you start your work, right? What you need to have is, you certainly need to have some goals in mind, and you want to have, I'm all for having a strategy as long as you know that it's not going to go that way, right? But hopefully the goals you have in mind, you'll get there. I don't want it, but I do think it's important. We certainly, before I recruited the team and before I had a picture of how it was going to play out, but I didn't know exactly how it was going to play out. And I certainly could never have thought we were going to do the things that we did, and how we were going to do them. So all I would say is start out with a strategy, sketch it out, don't spend much time on it. Get the tools, get the skill sets, and then build your campaigns, and then see where it goes. Yeah,
for organization, it could be something completely
Like, for example, let's say I want to have a park bench. I know that was giving as an example, but let's say I want to have a bench at a park, at my local park. It's no difference between, wanting, so that's the end goal, is wanting to have a park a bench at the park, right? Yeah, but what we're trying to say is that that is a long-term, like, main goal, like, you know, the all-seeing eye goal that you have. It's not anything. It doesn't give you the exact step-by-step thing that you have to do.
No, I'm not talking about step. I'm talking about, you know, a goal and like to start and how to
Yep.
And after you can use these different tools, but you have to keep focused on.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Sorry, folks, we're getting the word that we need to
We're
wrap
all
it up.
done. Thanks, everybody.